Now typically before you deck out your boat, you want to make sure the hull of the boat is in good shape before covering it all up. In the case of this rehab project, I went over the hull of the boat with Rust-Oleum paint primer. This is a good step to take just to make sure there's a good layer of protection in place. And it's always a great idea to sand and clean the surface before covering it all up. Then came the foam. For the foam, I used 2-inch pink foam boards to lay in between the ribs of the boat. All this required was simple measuring and cutting to get it done. I even used construction adhesive to install layers of foam sheet for buoyancy. And remember, any foam you take out, you should definitely replace as much as you can, just in case the unthinkable happens. Now that that's done, let's get on with the decking. Got my new plywood right here. This will be for the new floor, and I have the old one. I preserved the old one. I didn't toss it out because I wanted to use it as a template to make my marks on where the ribs are along the wood on the new piece. That way I don't have to do any other measurements and things like that. Makes it streamlined and a lot easier to find the ribs when I'm securing the wood down to the boat. So what I did was, and you guys might be able to see throughout, got circles around the boat. So I just circled all my holes right there throughout, okay? And I actually took time to do some additional ones as well. I have all the holes circled in black that relate to securing the floor down to the boat. And then I circled the holes for the bench seat. Not sure I'll need that, but I figure while I have it and while I know what each hole is for, let me just mark it. May come in handy later. So right there, bench seat. And these are all of the holes right there for the bench seat. Again, may not need it, but I figure I'll do it anyway. I did the same thing for the console right there in red. And then the rod locker holes I did right there, rod locker in silver. So I'm gonna place the old floor on top of the new, trace it all out, and then definitely I'm gonna mark the holes for the ribs of the boat. So when I plop this back in the boat, I know exactly where to bore my holes. Now, mind you, I'm not gonna go in the same exact hole for obvious reasons. Those holes had rusty screws in them. A lot of the holes are stripped out or just damaged. So I will go next to those holes, okay? That's just gonna make it a lot easier. So when this is all sealed and carpeted and I go to install it in the boat, I'm just gonna go boom, 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 boom. No time. Secure it to the floor. I won't have to do any markings on the walls and do all kind of stuff to get that done. And one thing to note here for the bench seat, the reason why I marked the bench seat holes, you might figure that, well, the bench doesn't go into the floor of the boat, and it actually does on this side. This circle right here is for the actual wood securing to the floor, but the bench seat is right next to it. So all of these, including the bench seat, go into the rib. So that's why that's marked. That's just gonna make life a lot easier. So that's done. Next, I am just gonna cut the outline out. And of course, as always, label top, front. So up is that way towards the front of the boat. And I didn't do it yet, but I'll do left and right as well on here. So this right here is the drain hole for the floor, which I kept in the same location. There really wasn't a reason to relocate it, so I used the original floor to mark and cut the new one with a 4-inch hole saw. I did the same thing for the front deck as well. It just takes a little more patience to remove the decking and flooring in one piece, but this technique just made everything easier in the long run. Now with everything traced out, it's on to making my cuts. Again, with using the old decking as a template, I was able to get all the cuts done right without making any adjustments. On this boat, I ventured into using fiberglass resin as my wood sealant for the first time. I won't get into all the details in this video because I did a full dedicated video on this, but I will say the top 3 things I liked about it was the short cure time, how well it adhered to the wood, and the strength of the resin. If interested, check the link at the top of the screen to see that video. Now, if you want the seat base to be concealed by the carpet, you'll need to remember to install the base first. Once I lined up the base, I drilled out the holes and installed it using 1/4-inch stainless steel bolts, washers, and nuts. Unfortunately, the bolts I used were too long, but in order to stay on schedule, I used them anyway and cut them down to size. Of course, I could have left them and it wouldn't have made a difference at all, but you know me, had to do it. For the carpet, I went with 20-ounce marine grade carpet. I did a full video on this as well. I'll link it at the end of this video, but a couple key takeaways is to 1, choose the right glue. choose a glue that works with your sealant, whether it's oil-based sealant or water-based. And that's because not all glues work with everything. And the second is to make sure you're using marine grade carpet. Either 20 or 16 ounce is always a good way to go for comfort and durability. All right, got the floor in. This is the cockpit floor and will be the subfloor for underneath one of the main hatches here. That'll be part of the deck extension, okay? So dual purpose. But what I wanted to point out to you is, why do I have all of these toothpicks sticking out of the floor? And the reason I did that is because I wanted to mark exactly where I need to drill down to secure the deck. And there's 3 different things that get screwed down here. You've got the bench seat for the driver and passenger seats. You've got the steering console that goes right here. And you've got the rod locker. I wanted to play it extra safe and know where my points are to secure the deck down. I put in the work ahead of time, but this will save me a lot of time when it comes to securing the deck. I've got 3 different coatings, color coatings going on. And I know, guys, this might seem really anal, but you know, what can I say? I've got black colored toothpicks. All of the black ones are for the actual flooring to the ribs of the boat. All of the green colored toothpicks are for the bench. And then I've got red for the steering console. That's what those are for. And the red ones go like this over towards there and then secure into those 3 toothpick marks right there. So I'll pull the toothpick out and drill in for each one of those. So that's what I did. Just something that actually my brother actually came up with that thought. And I just made it a reality here, applied it to this. A lot of screws are gonna go into this wood, and a lot of them broke when it was time to take them out. The old original screws and bolts and what have you, because this is a 30-year-old boat, completely rusted out. So we're going in with fresh stainless steel hardware for all the screws securing into the deck, steering console, everything on the boat. I got the console base back in. I went with number 10, 1¼ inch stainless steel self-drilling screws. So I went with fresh new holes into the side panel right here. And down below I have 1/4 inch lag screws with washers. That way it holds it down nice and solid. So all new hardware going in. I'll show you one of the original bolts that came out of there. Was a complete rust fest. The teeth on those were all worn out, absolutely crazy. To secure the flooring and the decking down, I went with number 10 screws, stainless steel of course, 1¼ inch, but make sure to measure your bolt yourself. As a matter of fact, triple measure before screwing anything down towards the hull of the boat. And just remember, when decking out a tracker boat, start from the bottom level, which is the cockpit floor, then install your bench seat, rod locker, side console, and then your casting deck. As I mentioned earlier in the video, there are 2 important steps in the decking process, which is sealing the wood and laying down the carpet correctly, which I've linked both here if you're interested in the step-by-step on how to get that done. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see the full reveal of this boat rehab project.